Good evening, everybody, and welcome to some stat check bonus content. I am back for another episode of Innis Reports. It has been a while since I had the compunction to record one of these, but I had so much fun at my little event this weekend that I really just felt like I had to bring all the information that I wanted to talk about with the new Dark Angels detachment to everybody. So yeah, we're going to be here talking about Wrath of the Rock. I took it to a little 12-person GT this weekend. It was in my local store, Saltire Games in Dundee. It was a little, just a little get together, a chance to play something, blow off a little bit of steam, try the new mission pack with what's it called now? It's just called like the Chapter Proof 2025 season. I think it is. It's not Leviathan or Prior Next anymore, which I think it's a little bit strange when there's no naming convention for it. But the new mission pack, I got a chance to try that out, play some games with that in a tournament environment. I got to play all of my best local players, and I had a great time. Went 5-0 with Wrath of the Rock, which is the new Dark Angels detachment. It gives you an army-wide -1 to wound for infantry and mounted if the strength of the attack is greater than your toughness, as well as a really nice, interesting suite of stratagems, which we'll kind of go over as I talk about my list and what it's trying to do and how it's trying to use each of those tools. So yeah, I'm going to be doing just the traditional report format today. I'm going to go through the list, the games I played, and the lessons. I'm not going to try and make this one like super in depth. It was a 12-person GT. I don't want to make this don't want to make it out to be more than it was. This was a really fun local event, but it was just a local event. But like I said, I had such a great time playing with the Dark Angels again that I just really wanted to come out here and talk to you guys about it. So yeah, that's this week's video. So let's start off with the business. So this is Wrath of the Rock, lying about my performance, 5-0 with my wonderful, wonderful little the lion. Since he came out the start of this edition or the end of last edition, I've been having just a really good time trying to jam him into lists every now and then, mostly unsuccessfully, but every so often I feel like he gets a little bit of a glow up occasionally, and you're just like, well, I'm gonna have to try him out. The first one was during the index things. Then he went down to damage on the sweep, lost all his cool special rolls within the Dark Angels Codex. Then he went up to damage 2, and we tried him out again, and he wasn't all that interesting. He got his devastating wound protection back. We tried him out again, and he wasn't all that interesting. And he's just gotten his update. So instead of having the +1 to hit aura in melee, he has a real ones to hit and wound aura in melee now. And instead of having some terrible Vect aura, he now can teleport himself in the command phase, which is a super interesting rule that definitely came up a couple times throughout my tournament. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to having a chat about that. So let's get into it. Let's start with the easy bit, which is the list. So 2,000 points does not go a massive amount of the way in Dark Angels when you're trying to fit in, especially the really competitive data sheets like Deathwing Knights. The Lion plus 3 squads of Deathwing Knights is 1,065 points. That does not leave a whole lot of space left if you're trying to desperately jam the Lion in to play about with other stuff. So some of the conventional things like having a shooting phase or the Samuel plus Outriders combination, which is a really powerful data sheet. I also don't personally own Samuel, so he's been just a place of, if I ever get around to it, playing this army more, it's probably something I would start looking at, and we'll talk about that towards the end. So we went with Lionel Johnson. Definitely the reason I'm playing the army, right? I want to try the new lion. I want to try the new detachment, and this felt like a great place to marry those two goals together. He benefits a ton from being able to have that -1 to wound on his profile now, and also having access to an advanced charge stratagem in this detachment. It really does help him out with his mobility. There's no, so to speak, damage output increasing stratagems in this detachment for the fight phase at least. But advanced charge definitely gets you a level over there. You've got access to armor, contempt, all those good things that keep the lion alive and ticking. We've got Azrael plus 5 Stargard veterans. I love Azrael. +1 CP. He didn't get the change that Marnie's Calgar did that made him need to be your warlord to generate that CP. He kicks out a 4 invulnerable save with sustained hits to his unit, so I married him up with 5 Stargard veterans. Another unit that can benefit quite strongly from that advance in charge because they have assault on all their weapons except Azrael's and the heavy bolter. So they're quite capable of coming out of a building, shooting something to death, and then charging something else. The move oath is actually quite nice for Sternguard. They can, come out, shoot one target, move the oath to a second one. It's not a play that ever came up for me, but it's definitely something that was in my idea when I was putting the shoot together. I could see even wanting to play potentially a 10 man of these guys because they were really good the whole weekend. Not the space I'm in right now, but for 100 points, I think Sternguard worked really well with Azrael. They support his desire for wound rerolls with all of his devastating wounds quite well. We have a captain with Parafist and 5 assault intercessors with ancient weapons, a very standard loadout unit. You'll see this in all kinds of places. That free stratagem that he gets access to, as well as his once per game +2 attack and devastating wounds, really does just marry the form and function of a combat unit that is kind of one-shotty. You pop that once per game, it goes Super Saiyan on its damage output. With Ancient Weapons, he goes to Strength 10, AP 3, Damage 3, with 8 attacks, 4 rerolls to hit, potentially from ultimate moment, 4 rerolls to wound, almost always from an objective. You could put him out on the board edge, rapid ingress him in for free with Captain Free Strat, and then go for your opponent's expansion objective, or go for wherever they put their high priority units that you want to deal with. This guy was fine. We'll kind of talk about him as we go. The fact that he keeps that sort of 10-3-3 profile after he's punched the first time, or potentially not needing to use it to go through something, did come up a couple of times. But he definitely, I've come off the back and playing a lot of Blood Angels recently. He is not the Rage Shield Warrior captain, right? And I think that's very important to say. This guy is definitely not that. The durability increase from having that Minnesota wound definitely wasn't nothing, and he'll sometimes still throw a free stratagem, armor, contempt, or go to ground to keep himself ticking. But broadly, yeah, just okay. Lieutenant with combo weapon with tempered in battle. This was a kind of an I have 10 points concession. I really like the enhancement in theory. It's an enhancement with a 6-inch aura of reroll leadership and battle test, which is really powerful in a metagame where things like demons and the new Chaos Knights book potentially, if we as we move into that, and also Tyranids with the new Subterranean Assault attachment as that pops up. It seems like an interesting kind of tool to have. It helps this guy lock down your objective a little easier, and having that reactive move back into Deathwing Knights and all that kind of stuff is super powerful. We have 5 intercessors. They're the guys that hold your home objective. Something's got to do it. Dirty job. Not every, I played against a lot of armies that had deep strikes, so they didn't get to be too aggressive. But in a couple of games, they got to sticky and leave, which is great. That's my favorite part about playing this unit, is that once you've dealt with your opponent's, deep strike threats, or if they don't have any, you get to just have a full extra Space Marine unit to play with compared to playing something like intercessors back there, infiltrators back there. 2x5 scouts. I think there's a lot of vacillation on how and when and why to play 1, 2, or 0 scout squads. For me, the scouts are really at their best in 2 places. One is armies that want the level of aggression that they can bring on turn 1. So armies like Blood Angels, things like that, are really good at going second with rapid ingress threat. Really appreciate being able to apply a bit of extra pressure turn 1 and go and do some stuff. And then some armies just have very, very poor secondary scoring potential and need to play multiple scout squads to have a chance of hitting good cards. So that would be things like Ironstorm, potentially this army as well, right? I'm playing a very small unit count. I want all of my scoring units to be as flexible as possible, and scouts fill that role best because they can be my early push pressure, they can be my late game pressure, they can do whatever we want. They've also got reasonable durability with the -1 to wound. It does keep them alive and taking a little longer than people would expect, while also giving you that chance of playing that turn 1 push pressure if you want it. So yeah, I think that was kind of why I went with 2 scouts. It would have been very easy to cut tempered in battle, turn one of these scout squads into another intercessor squad, a reaver squad, an incurser squad, like anything in that 80-point suite in Space Marines. There are 405 80-point units that you could put in that spot, but I liked having access to that, just that second burst of redeploying them and to really get your secondaries down. We have 3 squads of 5 Deathwing Knights. These guys are here because they are, as far as I can tell, the most compelling reason to play Wrath of the Rock. -1 to wound is a flatly insane rule on Deathwing Knights. They are so incredibly durable. Even in this new meta game of insanely high damage output, these guys felt durable. And that is a thing that I don't know if I would have been able to say about Deathwing Knights a month ago. And we'll talk about this again a little bit later, but I have an entire line on a slide that's just called, What About Gladius? And in Gladius, Deathwing Knights die. They really do. And it's not trivial to kill them, but they do eventually go down. In this detachment, I think I lost 4 squads across 5 rounds, 3 of them in one game, and that was against the World Eaters, which are a very high explosive damage output army that was putting a lot of devastating moves on them. Outside of that, I really don't think I lost. I went down to a lot of 1 or 2 guys on the squads, but those 2 guys would just wander around doing whatever they wanted for the rest of the game, and it was very, very, very cool to have that sort of level of flexibility. The advanced charge really does help them get in the game. The advanced charge is really good timing because you can use it after you roll the advanced dice and then make a decision about whether you want to use advanced charge or not. And you can either stage them or push them, and they're really good at doing that. And then the most compelling reason to play Wrath of the Rock, the -1 to wound is great. But Leonin Aggression is one of the most messed up strategies in the game. So for anybody who's not read Leonin Aggression, it is at the end of your opponent's charge phase, if any units are within 3 of any of your Space Marine units, your Marine unit can declare a charge. And then if your unit has the Deathwing keyword, that is within 6. Oh my goodness, this rule is incredibly powerful. The ability to have a 6-inch threat projection around all of your Deathwing Knight squads and Azrael squad, because Azrael and the Starter veterans have the Deathwing keyword, is insane. You have so much area of the board that is suddenly under your control that you can say you can't go here because the Deathwing Knights will charge you. The potential to like double heroic effectively, because if something charges one thing, you heroic with the squad and then charge them with Deathwing Knights on top of that, really gives you a ton of that ability to play combat pressure and really lock down your objectives and make it very hard for your opponents to contest you, right? It's very difficult to push into this army. One, because it's incredibly durable. -1 to wound, potentially armor contempt, -1 damage is insanely durable, plus fight first from the lion. And then you add in this whole extra layer of messing with your opponent's ability to play the game traditionally, right? How do you consistently and effectively flip objectives off this army? Well, you kind of have to pile onto the consolidate onto the objectives, which means that I need to leave something nearby them, and if I'm conscious of doing that, my scout squads stay very near my Deathwing Knight squads to make sure that I've always got an answer for that, right? It can be a little terrain dependent. I found on some of the boards that I played on. You'll see this on the pictures that I took from the sort of the deployment steps. The On some of the maps, you just couldn't reliably hold an objective from wholly within six of it, and on those kinds of maps, it's definitely a bit tougher. So this is the kind of army that I would always be very conscious of what the terrain I'm playing up against looks like, because not everything is going to be perfect for it. But it felt very powerful in the moment to have this tool of just incredible flexibility available. And then the last thing that I tried out, there's the last stratagem that really matters here. There's a 1 CP plus 2 strength stratagem in shooting for infantry and mounted, and I thought that Inceptors seemed like the best place to try that. Um, Being able to push Inceptors from strength 8 to strength 10 is effectively plus 2 to wound against toughness 9 targets. That's a lot of what I was worried about with this army. Kind of in that space where I'm thinking about things like drones in Death Guard, rhinos against anything, and things like Doomsday Arcs, because Doomsday Arcs with Silent King are one of the natural predators of the Deathwing Knight, with that ignore modifiers are putting them at damage, their damage 4 in the perfect spot to just nuke you off the table. So I was very conscious that I wanted something that could go and threaten to deal with those. Plasma Scepters are still 240 points. I will say that I think all of my games, my opponents bemoaned the difficulty of screening 16 deep strikes, and that was very much a part of keeping my opponent from being able to just full rush me. Because as much as I love and trust my Deathwing Knights, I don't want to make them have to roll 4-up saves. I want the Deathwing Knights to be doing as little work as they can during the game. The more that my Deathwing Knights can be dealing with the things that I can deal with the things that deal with Deathwing Knights before the Deathwing Knights engage, the happier I will be, because they can then they can walk through fields of fire basically untouched, because at the point where your opponent's mass damage 3 or their high AP volume damage or their devastating wounds is gone, Deathwing Knights become effectively untouchable in the late game. And that's a lot of what I'm playing towards with this army, is getting from early game me having a decent chunk of stuff, but not a ton, to me having the second or third squad of Deathwing Knights be fundamentally unkillable, and then just controlling the late game with that, plus whatever assets I have spare from the rest of the gameplay. And that played out pretty well across the 5 rounds. I would describe this army broadly, derogatorily, as a press W army, which is to say that most of your game plan with this army is to walk forward menacingly, as menacingly as you possibly can. And it's not to say that it's without nuance. You will definitely have to stage. You have to screen your backfield with not a lot of stuff to do that with. You're going to have to make concessions to all of that stuff. But broadly, the game plan is project threat, execute on that threat. There is not like a second plan to this, right? You don't have the shooting to stop your opponent from deploying in the open against you. So your opponent's going to deploy in the open against you. You can't pop a rhino without it being quite hard work. So your opponent's going to threaten you with rhinos. Your job is to walk forward in their face and say, I don't care. Here is Deathwing Knights. And I think for that reason, it's a really compelling army. And I've really enjoyed that, like, sort of very different approach to playing the game. Obviously, I've played a lot of Blood Angels recently, as well as Gene Circle, Host of Ascension, and it's just a completely different feel to those armies, right? It's a lot of I would almost describe it, to use like a magic term, as a blue deck, right? It felt like every time I did something, my opponent wanted to do something, I had an answer for it, but it was an answer that was like so incredibly telegraphed as to be stupid to feel like you had to play around it, but also impossible to play around. Your opponent wants to flip an objective off you. Cool. Well, I have the ability to boost my OC if I'm in combat with a stratagem. I have the ability to heroic you. I have the ability to charge you. I have armor of contempt, and also the lion has fight first and is on the objective too. Good luck. You like, I am showing you my grip of things that I can do to stop you. You can try to figure it out if you want to. And for me, no one did, and that's always a great place to be, when you feel like you've got powerful defensive mechanics. And then Deathwing Knights walking forward with -1 to wound and all of their layered defensive buffs, it really did feel like the army I wanted. I think the most damage I ever took on a unit of Deathwing Knights in a phase was maybe 12, and that was from Grey Knights with double Librarian, and then, or sorry, yeah, no, I think 11 is the most damage an individual unit of Deathwing Knights ever took in a phase. Like, I definitely lost like a squad in a turn before, but that was with like an army of concentrated firepower. It was very, very, very effective. I had a really good time with it. So let's jump into game one. So I'm gonna minimize my head a little bit so that we can see a bit more of this picture. That one, yep, there we go. So game one, I'm playing up against Hammer of the Emperor Guard. This is a fairly traditional list. It's double Dorn, a bunch of double Dorn, a bunch of Lehman Russes. You can see a Dorn just up here, a Dorn down here. This is the Rural Ones one. This is the Feel No Pain, and then an Exterminator, a Vanquisher, another Vanquisher here. There's an Executioner in reserve. This is a Chimera. There's a Taurox behind this container, and then a Sentinel here, and then there's various Kazakin around. I go with the tried and true game plan of stick 1 Deathwing Knights in reserve, and then stick the Inceptors in reserve, obviously, and then I have the Lion and 5 Deathwing Knights here with Azrael. I have 5 Deathwing Knights here. I have my Assault Intercessor Captain squad here because this distance is just about crossable with a high advance. So I can, at the start of my turn, the first thing I can do every turn is just roll this advance. If I roll a 6, he can a 5 or 6, he can go. If not, he sits there and waits, and I can advance and charge something else. And then we're playing hidden supplies. I've got this nice little nook in here that I can shove Deathwing Knights into that can threat project this objective. And then once I can stage Deathwing Knights into here, I should have a pretty solid plan for locking down my 2 side objectives as soon as I deal with this Taurox. There's a great firing lane up the side of this board here, but I can kind of get a load up lieutenant onto this objective or potentially the lion and kind of just sit them there and know that I'm going to lock down those. And then I'm going to start applying as much pressure as I can to this side of the board, potentially looking at like rapid ingressing and charging into the tanks because ultimately I've got the durability to do that. I can rapid ingress in front of 1 or 2 vehicles, know that I'm broadly going to be fine. And the game more or less played out like that. Joe went first. Joe pushed into my Joe decided not to push into me. He kind of staged up, sat on my objectives, pushed the Vanquisher at me to get a tempting target. I charged that Vanquisher. I think 6 guard tanks. I lost 4 of them, and then that was about it. And then I kind of charged up into that space, went across to his home objective. With the way that he had staged forward to flip my objective, Azrael ended up getting a charge in because he had to put his Kazakin to the wall. Azrael then charged into his Kazakin on my side objective, and then from there advanced and charged towards my opponent's deployment zone and flipped tank and then tagged the Rogaldorn, pushed him back to his quarter. And then at that point, the Lion and the Deathwing Knights went down the bottom right and went and flipped sort of his side objective down here, along with my Ingress squad of Deathwing Knights and my Inceptors from reserve. And then I just pushed this flank here and pushed this flank here, and kind of the Lion walked a path down this way, vaguely carving through like the remnant chunks of vehicles at 5 health. Yeah, no, it played pretty much exactly how we drew it up. Really simple performance here on primary. 10, 10, 15, 15. Secondaries were fine, unexciting. This list is not incredible at scoring secondaries. I think that's a very important thing to say here. That your secondaries are going to be kind of a lot of, you'll draw your cards, you'll go, that one I've already scored, that one will happen if it happens, and then you go about punching your opponent in the face as hard as you can, and you get the secondaries that you can on the way through. The late game secondaries tend to be a lot easier if your opponent's out of stuff, but you also won't have a ton of stuff, so you definitely do need to keep an eye on that. It is not completely trivial to do. But you'll find that your game plan is mostly to bully your opponent's primary down. One of the things that I found a lot with this army is the second your Deathwing Knights got into combat, they chained combats because you would charge a tank, and then you would get a little bit around the side of it so that when it fell back, it was still within 6 of your squad. And then if they didn't kill it, you would charge it again, and then you would just keep doing that repeatedly. So I think I had a Deathwing Knight squad that kind of came, rapided in here, walked in, charged a Chimera. Because I was on this objective now, he couldn't just fall back with it, so the Chimera just stayed in combat. I killed the Chimera in Joe's turn, consolidated 3, walked forward 5, charged the tank, got around the side of that tank, punched that tank, it got it down low because Deathwing Knights without a damage increase stratagem, you're not using Lance lethal to get, or Lance plus 1 EP to get the AP3, or winning on 4s, right, with the swords, right? You're just using the mazes and just hoping to chunk through. You'll chunk through, 5, 7, 10 wounds on a vehicle pretty consistently, especially if you're not using Oath. And then that turns into, well, that tank either has to not fall back and stay there, or in this case, it's Hammer the Emperor. He fall back and shoots. He takes his desperate escape check. He passes it. He shoots them, and then he kills 2 of them. And then the other 3 heroic back in and pick up the vehicle. And then the next turn they charge the door. And then they just keep doing this, like they're just chasing their own tail, following these vehicles around. And it was very, very frustrating for Joe to deal with, because I was just like chasing him away from the objective as like the scout squad wanders onto it, or like the Inceptor squad, I think, just towed onto it. It was like, you don't have time to shoot the Inceptors and the Deathwing Knights, and the Deathwing Knights are the ones killing you. So that's fine. I'm not playing for maximum score here. Right? I've got my lone up lieutenant on this objective here. I've got a scout squad on this objective here. Like, I'm pretty comfortable just sitting on these points. I don't need to do more than that. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting game. Really, really interesting to play against Hammer. Good to go second here. I think the Lion sat in for it, feel no pain every turn this game. Because against guard with like grenade plus tank shock, it's very real that the Lion, if you're not careful, could just take like 8 damage and die. So I'm very conscious in matchups where my opponent has decent wound output that he's probably just going to have to stay in the 4-up, and that you maybe will occasionally get the if you go for it, you can do the pick him up in the command phase, rapid ingress in your opponent's turn, then in your command phase switch back to Fort Philippine before he pushes in. But this game, I never really felt the need to do that, because he was just walking fine, and I never wanted to throw a 9 charge at him because I always had better options. Game 2, we pull into Dave Murray playing Berserker Warman. Dave is an ex-Team Scotland teammate of mine, so this is a great game to get in. This picture is from a lot later in the game, because this game was a complete mess. Forge Fiends are not very good at killing Deathwing Knights. We kind of mathed out. If he gets within 18, on average they kill about 1.5, which is definitely not like trivial numbers, Um, but it definitely means that it's very hard for him to justify walking with an 18 to me when I advance and charge at him. And he has a lot of difficulty dealing with the lion. So this game kind of presented as I put a Deathwing Knight squad here, one here in the middle, and then one sort of here hidden behind the angle where his Forge Fiends that were deployed here and here could see. And then just kind of walked at his expansion objective. He came out with a bunch of stuff. I counterpunched into it, hiding in this crease. His Forge Fiend had to start coming down, and then the lion kind of just walked through the middle towards his expansion objective, while his rhino full of Karn went up the top. His 8 bound were kind of just trading into the death company. My -1 damage was keeping him off me. His -1 damage was meaning that I wasn't consistently killing a ton of stuff, but I was doing enough work. So eventually, because I was able to get my scouts into his backfield because he doesn't have a ton of stuff, the scouts were able to kind of take that time, go and flip his own objective one time on turn 4, so that I could get the primary at the end, like unsticky it. I was able to kind of get that late game priority on primary, where he goes 9-9-5-4 here, I go 8-4-9-13, and then my secondaries are a little better than World Eaters because I have a little bit more stuff. I'm going second; it's a little easier for me to get my late game cards, and I have 2 scout squads, which now one scout squad did get one tapped by a Forge Fiend on turn 1 at long range, which was heartbreaking. But forced to hit, threes to wound into no save is a messy profile when he rolls. He rolled up 9 shots, which is 12, hit with 10 of them at long range. I'm just like, oh, I guess my squad is vaporized. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting case here of, again, needing to stay at the fort, feel no pain. Dave hit sustained hits, devastating wounds, I think, every turn of this game, which meant that I was just always sitting there going, well, I can't let my infantry just explode when they get touched. I need to have the threat of heroics. I need to have the threat of -1 damages. And I was able to use that to kind of keep him off me as I pushed to the side objective, kept him off the center. And then my turn 5 primary was just about high enough. Lion's highlight of disappointment here. All he did this game combat-wise was he stopped him ever charging me because of the fight first. And then he charged a squad of 8 bound, killed 2 of them, and then the other one fell back. And because my squad here got overwatched down to 1 guy, I had to just sit there and go, well, this guy can't reliably charge that guy and kill him because I need my advanced charge to go to the middle because I needed to deal with this Forge Fiend. So I guess the Lion's got to go and do it. So the Lion charged, killed 2 of them. The other one fell back behind the wall, and then the Lion had to go and charge the third one off the objective and then walk back onto objective 5. The Lion ended up teleporting on turn 5. This game is one of the few times he teleported, and he plasma pistol to spawn to death to get my last turn 5 extra 4 on primary to push this to a 13-7. Overall, the fight first on the Lion was really good this game, but his damage output is kind of anemic for his points. The Deathwing Knights were absolute heroes. At one point, I think the Deathwing Knight squad got charged by an 8 bound squad with a Slaughter Bound and a Spawn squad and a Demon Prince. And at the end of it, they had killed the 8 bound and they had lost. They lost 3 guys, killed 2 of the 8 bound, and then I fell back with them. They stood there, and then they just eventually walked through like 3 more units before they died to Carnsbrook on turn 5. But what that meant was because they had killed the 2 8 bound, Azrael squad walked down, shot the 8 bound, Azrael squad walked down. I walked the assault initiative squad out of this building here, shot the 8 bound to death with grenade and then shooting, and then I was able to shoot the Oath Demon Prince of 8 damage on him and shooting through -1 damage with Azrael squad at long range because Oath with 4 rolls to hit and wound is an absolute hell of a drug. Inceptors this game were actually really solid. They dropped in, they rapid ingressed on some primary to get me that 9 on turn 4, and then they pulled backwards, waited for some 8 bound to come forward, and then they walked in, shot the 8 bound to death, and then sat behind some Deathwing Knights. The Deathwing Knights got charged. The Inceptors got tagged to stop me doing stuff, and then they shot another squad of 8 bound to death because they're just damage three with their pistols, which was really really nice to have. Really nice to have that tool. So I was very reasonably big fan of in this game. Not a game where their their +2 strength came up all done, but definitely one that was nice to have the option of playing them a little more aggressively. So I did enjoy that. This was definitely the closest game of the tournament. This game ran like properly the full 3 hours on time because the world leaders were just making so many decisions. Very, very interesting game. Also, notably, no challenger cards this game. He went a little ahead of me. I spent a bunch of time catching up, and then I went a lot ahead of him at the end. But all of my points to get ahead of him came on turn 4 and 5, which point it was just a little too late for him to get challenger cards. Okay, game 3, Star Shatter Arsenal. This is 18 Wraiths, 2 Doomsday Arcs, and the Silent King. If I could design a matchup to be a little more stressful, it would probably be this one, especially on a board like this with just this super clean, super long firing lane from sort of right here, right down to here with 2 Doomsday Arcs. This game is one of the few that I went first in. I think it might have been one of the 2. So in this game, turn 1, I picked up the Lion, And I went, I'm going to threaten to Rapid Ingress on the middle if you don't do anything about it. And he didn't do anything about it. And I Rapid Ingress on the middle. And then he shot the scouts. And I then walked, he sort of pushed the tempting target. It gave him this objective at the top left. So he had to put this Wraith Squad onto it. The Wraith Squad deployed very aggressively in Crucible. He pushed it onto it. And then the Lion Rapid Ingress here, walked 8 forward, rolled an 8 on his charge, stuck around the side, got a line of sight of the Technomancer, precisioned the Technomancer out, and killed one more Wraith on top of that. Handed him 8 saves, killed the Technomancer and a Wraith. And then the Deathwing Knight squad that's inside this building, as well as the Astonishing squad connected in. And between those two squads, into a no feel no pain Wraith squad, successfully killed 2 Wraiths. It was some of the most insane 4-ups I've seen in my life. It was very, very interesting. Yeah, the lineup here is obviously in reserve. At that point, this Sternguard squad here pulled back to be outside a 10-inch charge of this Wraith squad. James felt like he was in a hole at this point. He pushed the Wraith to the center. He had basically, because I was fully staged inside this ruin because I just consolidated back, he didn't really have any good shooting angles, so he went for a 10-inch charge at my home objective. I Rapid Ingress the Deathwing Knight squad behind them, and then pushed into this Wraith brick. Azrael rolled an 11-inch charge and was able to consolidate into this building to see the Technomancer here, precisioned that guy out, and then the Deathwing Knight squad finished it off. The Lion and the Deathwing Knight squads that were in here pushed to the center Wraith squad, precisioned out that Technomancer the next turn, and was able to kind of close the game out that way. Highlight of this game, I switched to reroll 1-1 on the Lion, and he immediately got shot he immediately got tank shocked down to 5 health, and then the Silent King, with his 12 attacks, hitting on 2s, winning on 5s, had me 7 lethal hits, and I died instantly. It's like, come on, Lion. The one time I swapped you out of 4-up. So yeah, heartbreaking, disappointing there. This game ended with just 1 Doomsday Arc on this objective, and a Deathmark squad. I kind of had the rest of my army here, a Deathwing Knight squad here. I think I had fully given up control of this top left objective at that point. I had like a Doomsday Arc here, and then I had the Deathwing Knight squad here. So yeah, overall, really, really solid performance. I literally just ran at him with like a little bit of caginess, running at him when I was connecting charges. Yeah, it felt pretty good. Going first here definitely helped a bunch. I was able to get that Rapid Ingress on the center. I got good scores. Scorched Earth is a completely fine mission to go first in because you can push your opponent's primary pretty well. And the Necron army just doesn't have, again, a great time doing secondaries against me. As you can see here, yeah, James's secondaries are properly miserable because once you start, because I have the Inceptor squad with the threat of 6-inch deep striking, he's dropping like his Deathmark squad drops back here, his Ophidian squad drops here, his Locust solo drops here, and that's all the screening he's got, right? Once these flayed ones are down, he's only got those 3 units. So what's he really meant to do secondaries with? And it just really did become really, really difficult. Mark for Death bring it down being a particularly rough draw when the only unit in my army that's a vehicle or monster is the Lion, and he sat in the corner of this building, completely untouchable behind a wall. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult. It's really hard for Wraiths to charge at the Deathwing Knights at the best of times. Even if they're in the Silent King aura, it's still not consistent damage. And yeah, this was definitely just a really, really good show of like the layered durability buffs being amazing once when I'm playing away from the Silent King, and being able to advance a charge and Rapid Ingress really helped that. Okay, game 4, I played it to Mortarian's Hammer. You can find both of the games from this day on the Saltire Games, that's Saltire_Games Twitch stream. They do have player commentary. There's no additional, you should be able to watch them if you want to kind of skim through them. But yeah, they were some fairly interesting games. Obviously, the pictures I have here are as good. I didn't actually take any pictures, but you can kind of see the same sort of game plan here. I've got one, I was very, very conscious here of deploying all my stuff 3 inches apart so that I wasn't going to give him additional repetitive damage from his Playbrush Crawlers. Now, this board is really tough for Playbrush Crawlers specifically because these buildings here are too closed off for Playbrush Crawlers to get through, so he couldn't really get out of his deployment zone. Now, I think AJ made a mistake here if he needed to deploy them like here and here, but that would have very much pigeonholed him to be on this side of the board, where there's a ruin here like this. Obviously, it's come off for deployment. So it makes it very hard for him to pressure me, and I can push into this building here and then threaten to sort of advance a charge at him. So it's quite difficult for him to be in the position of PVCs in this game. And the rest of his stuff just doesn't have a ton of options. I've got a scout squad here that's threatening to dive this objective. I've got a scout squad here that's trying to do some secondaries. And then everything else is just kind of staged out the rest, right? So I've got my intercessors here, Deathwing Knights here, the Lion with his one-up body directly above him, a Deathwing Knight squad here, and a Deathwing Knight squad here. And my turn 1 is push Deathwing Knights and Astonishers onto this objective, push Deathwing Knights into this building, Azrael follows up, and then the Deathwing Knights, and I just push everything in a wave around this way, and I just connect it to the middle. He pushes the Rhino to try to chip the Lion down, gets the Lion down to 5 with the 3 models he's able to get in range because the Lion walks forward to about here. He's able to get the 3 models in range, like the 2 Blight Launchers and the Playcaster, drops the Lion to 5. The Lion walks forward, charges the drone, fails to kill it, and then I think it takes 5 more vehicles plus a grenade at that point to kill him the next turn. And then I'm just on top of him with 15 Deathwing Knights, and I the Deathwing Knights comes out of this building, rolls an advance charge, charges the Blight Hollow that's projecting threat on this side, walks onto the home objective, and then the 6-inch threat projection means that he can't really afford to stand on it, but he has to put me in contagion range because it's still turn 2. So he puts like one Poxwalker in contagion range of me, puts a PVC onto the objective, and I charge the Poxwalkers, kill them because the Lion takes slightly longer to kill than he can afford, and he's not able to sink any vehicles into me. I've also dropped my Inceptors in back here. Inceptors popped off one drone and then got shot by a Predator and a drone back and died. 240 points trading for 100 points, and then a little bit of shooting from him. Really just feels great. Love drones. They're in a great spot. So yeah, going first definitely really helped this matchup. I would have felt very, very bad about this game going second, but I was able to just kind of push forward, pop a Terraform in this objective, pop a Terraform in this objective, and then just pressure. Yeah, I think I terraformed this objective. He unterraformed it. I unterraformed it, and I was just able to keep AJ off of both of the side objectives because the Azrael plus Deathwing Knights squads. Also notably, this is one of those games that I could very easily have seen going wrong, but I never failed any of the charges at -2 from the Death Guard stratagem, or the one that lets you do -2 to charge. I just never failed one. So he pushed a 5 to a 7 twice and a 6 to an 8 once, and just hit them all. A couple of them were with CP rerolls, so we're trading a CP for a CP. But if any of those charges had failed, I definitely would have been in a much tougher situation. But it was very hard for AG to develop past the midfield because I had all my objectives locked down, and he just doesn't have time to consistently do anything. There's also a little bit of thing with Hammer where if you go first into it, if your unit starts the turn in contagion range, like within 12 of a unit, that's like fairly isolated. So for example, this Poxwalker squad here, I'm within 12 of it. So when he picks that unit, like he can't pick either of the units during turn 1 for contagion range because they're within 12 of the Poxwalkers. I then go first, I charge the Poxwalkers, I kill them. There's now nothing on that side of the board to drive into contagion range, but also the unit there that maybe he does want to PVC indirect isn't in contagion range. So it's sitting there still getting its 3-up save. I can free strike commander roll on the captain to keep another extra one alive, and he's not getting more wounds on 5s, he's only getting it on 6s. So if you're going first toward Iron's Hammer, applying a ton of pressure and isolating units could be a really good way to kind of get that additional pressure on the board. But yeah, as we can see here, another game of reasonable secondaries on my part, right? I hit a 30, not insane, but definitely pretty happy with that. And then was just able to really restrict the Death Guard in. A really tough go with his challenger cards as well. Just never really quite drawing anything that was incredible under any of those circumstances. All in is I think that's the do an action outside 18 of anything while he's fully put the deployment zone, or then strategic retreat and harbor power. Just not really doing enough for him. Then we come into game 5. This was the final. Mark was 3-1 at this point because obviously it was a 12-player event. Nothing too crazy. Mark's playing Warpbane Task Force, and I would like to say there was more nuance to this game, but I more or less just pressed W. So this scout squad scouts backwards. He goes first. This scout squad scouts into this building. His interceptor squad moves up 12 and charges me, which fair enough. And then I full pushed into this building. He walks within 6 of the scout squad that's up here, so they can't go back in reserve. And then he comes forward with the Dread Knight to try to kill the Lord in the middle. Between the Dread Knight and the interceptor squad that he puts there, he does pick it up. But then I full charge into the middle with a full Deathwing Knight squad that goes around the side here, charges the Dread Knight. I charge here. The Deathwing Knight's in the building here because they charge the interceptors that took this objective again, tempting target on turn 1 for him, right? Like I picked this objective, he had to put a unit on it, and then that gave my Deathwing Knights a slingshot. That's a really, really thing that's been really nice actually. If my board draws tempting target turn 1, Deathwing Knights just getting to charge that thing has been really nice. So yeah, definitely a thing to keep an eye on. If you can use that thing to be like, yeah, I'm not just stop you scoring it, but I'm going to make you bleed to do it. And then I was able to pressure him to his objective and then start connecting towards his home. The entire game was played sort of in this box. I was also able to rapid ingress the captain squad here, out of range of the Dread Knight that was here, out of 24, and then walk forward, charge onto his side objective, and then start pressuring the Dread Knight. It's just a really, really difficult matchup for him. The Philippine against Mortal Wounds obviously coming in really clutch here, shutting down those double librarians. Even the Brotherhood Champion just doesn't do that much damage. And then Grey Knights universally an army of strength 6 damage 2 in combat, and AP2 means they're shut down by -1 to wound, kicks them from 3s to 4s to wound on the Terminators. AOC drops them from 2s to might be from 4s to save to 3s to save, and -1 damage halves his damage. So if it's expected output from killing a Terminator, right, at base value, to kill a 4-wound Terminator should be I need to fail 2 saves, which means he needs to take 4 wounds, right? Because I save on 4s, and to do that he needs 6 hits. Okay, but once we add in the 3-layer defensive buffs, it's 4 wounds that I save on 3s, which means he needs 12 hits, and then he wounds me on 4s, which means he needs 24. So it's now 24 successful hits to kill a Terminator instead of 6, right? So it's literally 4 times as durable if I spend AOC here. And the Grey Knight units have 20 attacks in combat, which are 50 attacks in combat, which means that on average, a full squad of 5 doesn't kill a Terminator if I pop the strat. And he's got his offensive buffs of like reroll once to hit and wound, or reroll all wounds if he's got purifiers. And like a purifier squad did kill 5 wounds of Terminator, but it was close. Like he had to be 9 saves, and I just failed 5 of them on 3-ups. It's like, yeah, that happens, and it just didn't really matter that much. Yeah, the Lion was continually disappointing this game. I think he killed a Calidus assassin and did Locus, and then like finished off a 3-1 Dread Knight. He just never really did much. He's just being annoying, right? Threatening the heroics and things like that. One of the things that I found with this army is if you get like a bogged down game, it's all happening in the middle. The second you start popping Leon and Aggression to charge your opponent's turn, the game just starts ending really quickly, which is a really, really compelling reason to play the army. So overall, yeah, 5-0. Really, really happy with it. It was, again, like I said, it was just a local RTT GT, 2-day RTT effectively. But it was still really cool. I got to play against a bunch of different armies on a bunch of different train sets. And I think I used every stratagem in the army except the move Oath, which I just never really found a chance to. 2 CP is very expensive and it's got a decent amount of limitations on it. It's the kind of stratagem that I could see using on the captain, right? Because if the captain goes into your Oath target and then you move it to a second target after he kills it, you can do it for 1 CP, which I feel like is the sort of sweet spot that I would be finding it for. But I was often finding that I was rapid ingressing them and then going in that turn, which meant that I didn't always have the CP to spend on it. Azrael kicking out 2 CP every turn is just incredible. I really like that. But yeah, so overall, advance and charge, fantastic. +2 strength and shooting was fine, but every time, and like, it's nice, right? It's +2 to wound on your +1 or +2 to wound on your Inceptors almost every time you use it. It still doesn't make them very consistent. Like ultimately, it's still only 12 shots. So with Oath the moment, you're averaging 10 and a half, 11 hits, and then if you're wounding into a top 10 target, you're averaging 7 or 8 wounds, and then they save on 5s or 6s depending if they're in cover. Potentially 4s if they have a 2-up base save. It's like you probably kill a vehicle, but it's also a 240 point unit plus a stratagem plus your Oath. I've not been a huge fan of Inceptors for a while. The 60 Drake is super nice, but that stratagem didn't make me love them more, and they're definitely on the cutting block. Armored Attempt, we all know it. Leon and Aggression, I hope that I've conveyed how much I enjoyed having access to that stratagem. There were games I did not use it, but its impact on the game was psychologically incredibly massive because it stopped my opponent doing so many things to target my primary. Like if we go back and have a look at my primary scores through these 5 games, right? 50 primary and hidden supplies against guard. 34 against World Eaters, obviously very aggressive here. This was definitely the game that it was the most impactful, but also the least used. I don't think I ever used it because he just never gave me a chance to use it. And I was just getting brute forced off of primary more so than I was. It was causing him to bleed through units much faster than I was. This game, a comfortable 45 going first in Scorched Earth. This game, a 44 in Terraform against Mortarian's Hammer, and then a 50, right? So there was one game with below 40-ish primary, which was a game into like insane amounts of pressure. And even in that game, it was still creating a massive impact. The more impactful one there was actually the fight first on the Lion, but it was still very, very meaningful for stopping him, move blocking me, and restricting me in a lot of places. The plus OC stratagem came up a couple of times. I was using it a decent amount against the Death Guard army. What it's really nice for is like degraded units of Deathwing Knights flipping objectives back. So 3 Deathwing Knights can charge a squad of 5 guys, kill it, tag into the next one, and then pop the strat to go to OC5, OC6, and still flip the objective, or do the same off of a vehicle, which I really liked having access to. It does require you to be engagement range, so it has some limitations. It's not easy to use all the time, but it does just like clean up some of the situations where it's just 1 CP flip primary, and that was really nice to have access to. Pardon me. I'm trying to think what the other one is. Give me 1 second while I just double check this because I think I spoke about all of them. Move Oath, AOC, +2 strength and shooting, advance of charge, Leon and Aggression. No. And I think I covered them all. We're going to call it there. If I didn't, sorry, your strategy clearly wasn't important enough for me to remember it. Move Oath, AOC, +1. Yeah, advance and charge. Notably, I will say it did come up a few times that there's no fallback in charge of this attachment. It's only for Ravenwing units. The Deathwing Knights can't use that, right? It's only advance and charge, which I really didn't love, if I'm being honest. The lack of that definitely meant that the Deathwing Knights would get bogged down a decent amount, but it wasn't like a game ender or anything. It was just a little annoying. Were the defensive tools enough? I'm going to be honest, yes. The number of times my opponents were just like pulling their teeth out over -1 to wound Deathwing Knights, but even just the lone up lieutenant being stealth, -1 to wound, 5 up invulnerable save, or 5 up feel no pain, potentially armored attempt. The same thing on the Stern Guard squad with Azrael's 4 up invulnerable save, right? All of these units were just slightly more annoying to kill than my opponent wanted. The number of times my opponent would just be like, it's 2s to win. I'm like, actually, no, I'm really sorry, but he gets 3s. And then they'd roll their 8 dice and there'd be like one more failed wound than they were like comfortable with. And then you go, you roll a little hot on your 5 ups and your Space Marine unit suddenly still holding the objective or requires another activation to kill. A lot of times it was a lot of that. And if you're playing carefully around that, like you can't rely on it, right? But effectively all your units are 1 to 2 toughness higher a lot of the time, potentially as much as like 4 toughness higher in the right situation. It really did add up to being miserable to deal with. Your opponent's damage output is super inconsistent in a way that they're not used to against your type of profile. And I think the place that it's best on is toughness 4 and 5 units, right? Like it's obviously incredibly good on units that would normally are pointed around being wounded on 2s and 3s that are suddenly getting wounded on 3s and 4s. And the Azrael Stern Guard unit was like the highlight of the tournament for me, right? It was the best unit in the list that wasn't a Deathwing Knight unit because obviously we all know Deathwing Knights are incredible. The Azrael Stern Guard unit was just phenomenal the entire time. And a lot of that was off the back of the layered defensive buffs. It doesn't need to armor contempt because it's 3 up, 4 up with -1 to wound. It was just doing incredible work. I'm really, really big fan of that. It really helped. It did not do goddamn anything on the Inceptors. They still folded like wet butter because your opponent looks at them and goes, well, that's a 250-point unit, 240-point unit. It's worth the output. It costs the same as a Deathwing Knight brick, and it's maybe 1/10 as durable. So yeah, definitely not going to be so. Now, Oath of Moment +1 to wound is the thing that, whenever you look at another chapter, it's really hard to justify. The Deathwing Knights don't need it, right? Like they wound on 4s against pretty much everything you care about, or a little bit worse. Specifically, fuck Death Shroud. But other than that, AJ didn't have any. But it still took them like 2 turns to kill the Lord of Virulence because I was just winning him on 5s and just rolled a bit bad. Yeah, the split of double mace and 1 sword really felt like I was never really lacking that oath. But the biggest thing is that this attachment has nothing that does anything really for vehicles. There's an advanced shoot and charge stratagem for maybe potentially like Redemptors or Vindicators, but that's kind of it. There's AOC, but there's no stratagems, there's no abilities, there's no army rule that really supports those. So I felt like I wanted to play the all infantry version, and I'm kind of comfortable with that. What it did mean is that people were deploying with no respect whatsoever for what my army could or couldn't do. Forge Fiends just deploying in the open, everybody just like, yeah, it's fine. I don't need to worry about it. I would definitely like to tweak that so that I've got something, kind of going down that route of looking at something like the Olivier Blood Angels list that had the 18th Blade Guard of going, yeah, okay, you actually just do need a couple of Lancers or something in that space to just make your opponent have that modicum of respect for you that this list is kind of missing. That was definitely a thing that I noted, and I would like to tweak. And then the other thing is, does this bear comparison to Gladius Task Force? Personally, I think it's really tough to say. The layered durability on the Deathwing Knights is so incredibly good. I cannot overstate cannot overstate just how much it breaks the math on that unit to that side where they feel like they did at the start of the edition again, because they don't die. They walk through fire like nothing else in their, like, I don't even want to see it in their points bracket, but in the game, right? They live like a wraith brick. While also being very durable to some of the stuff that kills wraith brick, like volume low AP, right? Like they're not vulnerable to lethal hits, bolter shots, right? It's very, very difficult to chew through them without like dedicated anti-deathwing tools, and even those aren't good at it because there's very frequently only 1 or 2 sources of that in your army, and this army is very good at scalping out 1 or 2 things with the Lion or the Stern Guard or the Inceptors. So that durability felt really good. And in a sort of like a teams environment context, I could see that being like an incredibly powerful counter melee tool. Just be like, yeah, in pairings, we're just like, we can weaponize this to neutralize any melee matchup and know that we're going to win that game. And potentially, going down that route or going down the route of being eschewing all of the anti-melee tools and going very heavy into the anti-shooting tools. Potentially, you bring like a Death Shroud for stealth, and then watch the guard armies fall apart as they try to shoot through you. Like I could see that being really interesting. So yeah, I think this is a very, very interesting like nullifier army stunner. In singles, does it lack the flexibility and the damage output boosts? Yes, but it supports the durability is really high, and durability wins games just as much as anything else does. It's just pretty inconsistent doing it when you're in the moment, right? You kind of have the thing where one Deathwing Knight isn't durable, but a squad of 5 of them is very durable because across the 3 squads of 5 of them, each squad will roll average in phases. The number of times, game 1, 2 Dorns and an Executioner killed 2 guys. The Karn Brick charges in and kills 2 guys through the Feel No Pain. It's very real to just have those, bounce moments, or double Forge Fiends killed 2.5 of them. Doomsday Arc kills 1 because you popped the 4 up in their dev wounds, and they couldn't move because they needed to hit on 2s because they're ignoring modifiers from the Silent King, which means they're not rerolling 1s, which makes them super inconsistent, right? Like, there's a lot of that going around, and I really, really did find that a very, very compelling and enjoyable thing to do. I enjoyed playing this more than I enjoyed playing Gladius Dark Angels right now. I find it really difficult to look at Gladius Dark Angels and not go, why is this not Ultramarines? But this version of Dark Angels has its own unique selling point to me, and that, for me, is it stronger than Gladius Dark Angels? No, but I don't think Gladius Dark Angels is stronger than Ultramarines. And I think that this is different enough from Ultramarines that it has its own competitive advantage selling points that Gladius Dark Angels doesn't compared to Ultramarines. So that's where I'm at with that. So let's change ideas. The Lion probably shouldn't be in this list. He's not very good. It's the last point on this list here, but I'm going to talk about it first. He did, I want to say, I don't think he did 315 points of damage across my 5 games combined. I know that's not true, but it does feel pretty close. He warps the game around him in a way few other things do. He makes everybody is always conscious of, where's the Lion? Where could the Lion be? What could the Lion do next turn? Is he going to teleport? That 4 Field of Pain aura does very good work for keeping your army alive, but his damage output is pretty weak. He's not very consistent, right? 2s and 2s sounds great. And he's strength 12. He's not, not punching at strength 14 like Element is. So he wounds a lot of things that you would think he would well on 3s and 4s, like Roboldorns, for example. Lethal hits is great, but he can't really afford to be in the brutal ones to hit wound aura very consistently because that 4 Field of Pain is so good. So that's kind of hard to justify. And his damage output it's fine, but again, 2s and 2s is a 60, just under 70% conversion rate, which sounds great, but on 8 attacks, a 70% conversion rate is 5 or 6 wounds, and into 4 of invulnerable saves, he maybe kills 3 guys. 4 invulnerable saves, he maybe kills 4, right? So if you're charging it to like 8 bounds or something like that you wound on 4s with the sweep, you kind of can't justify that. So it's not unreasonable that he doesn't kill 3 of them. The sweep attack is great, but it's still only strength 6, right? It's not strength 8 devastating wounds like Elements. It's strength 6 with sustained hits. It's got good AP, but very inconsistent. So I found his damage up very hard to rely on. His durability is great. It really is. Fight first, 3 invulnerable save, but 3 invulnerable saves are not infallible. They do still just sometimes suck shit. And sometimes he tanks an army of firepower, right? Against Death Guard, he went down to 5 wounds from three Plague Marines, then got grenaded down to 3, and then he didn't drop until I think it was like 5 or 6 vehicles later before he finally died. Because he just does it's very scammy. Now, should you cut him? Yeah, probably. You can fit a lot of stuff in for 350 points of Space Marines, and I'll talk about what my head's at on the next one. I would love to fit Samuel on the list. Samuel would add another bit of reach to the army. Just that ability to have another unit with advanced charge that doesn't need a stratagem, but that burst of damage 3 in an army that's very universally damaged 2 as well. Azrael and the Deathwing Knights all being damaged 2. It would be nice to have an additional source of that on top of the Captain and the Lion. And I think he would go in instead of the Lion for me. Samuel plus 3 Outriders is 195 points. Still leaves you with 120 points to spend on top of cutting the Lion, and then you could very easily go down like a Scout Squad for nearly 200 points to spend. Shooting phase options, Inceptor is probably not it for me. I think there are better tools in here, and I think you should just play 2 vehicles, whether it's 2 Vindicators, 2 Lancers, 2 Ballistic Dreadnoughts, whatever. The version that we've got for the next side is 2 Predator Annihilators, because I just want something that can kill Forge Fiends that deploy in the open, and I don't trust Lancers to do that into vulnerable saves. At least Predator Annihilators have more shots, and they're cheaper. Captain versus Judicar. If I'm cutting the Lion, I would like another source to fight first, and a Judicar with Ancient Weapons feels like it's kind of fitting into that same space. He goes to 9-3-3 devastating wounds all the time, less attacks, not as many rerolls, not that ability to use the strat, but he does give fight first, and fight first is a really powerful tool. So I'm going to have a potential look at trying that out. I would like to fit Vanguard Veterans in. They get the Deathwing keyword, which means they can 6-inch heroic. They have a Storm Shield, so they layer that durability very well, right? 3 up armor, 4 vulnerable save, -1 to wound, with 6-inch heroic tools just does give you that another unit that can play that kind of space, right? And with the points cuts to Vanguard Veterans, I think that's the kind of space I would like to look. And then, we already spoke about them. And then lastly, this is the updated list that I put through. So we have Azrael with 5 Stronger Veterans, same thing as before. Samuel with 3 Outriders. Judicar with 6 initial companions holding ancient weapons. That's to get him the Deathwing keyword to give him that -1 to hit. Again, layering that durability, -1 to hit, -1 to wound, fight first. Great on a unit that has the ability to pressure objectives really well, and OC2, so they can hold your primary very consistently against all kinds of different things. Lieutenant with the combat weapon, just one of the best scoring pieces in Space Marines. 5 interest for your backfield, 2 scouts for all the reasons we spoke about earlier. 3 Deathwing Knight squads, nothing changing there, and then 2 Predator Annihilators, because they're the cheapest in slot. It's 270 for 2 of them. This list, I think, is 5 points under. So you could potentially shuffle some stuff around, cut one scout squad, and then you could turn those into lancers. You could potentially turn them into two ballistic dreadnoughts, two predator structures, whatever you want. I would hate to say that this was in any way a solved army, but this is kind of where, if I was going to take this sort of event, next weekend, we're getting into W season right now, so this is very much a blowing off steam army for me. But this is the kind of space that I'd be like interested in pushing the army if I was going to, take Wrath of the Rock to win it to another tournament. And that's it. That's all I have on Wrath of the Rock. I had a really good time at the event. Thank you to Saltire Games for hosting it. If you want to chat more about anything that we spoke about today, you can check out patreon.com/statcheck, patreon.com/statcheck, or the YouTube membership program below for access to our Discord. I was posting some game by games, some lion kill tallies, all that kind of stuff in our event right now channel. So if you want to chat about any of that, please check it out. And if you'd like to work with me personally on anything that we spoke about today, anything else, if you're interested in pushing a detachment into a different direction, trying something new, or anything in that space, drop us a message at coaching@stat-check.com, or check out the website at stat-check.com/coaching. Find the tab that says Innes Wilson, drop me a message. I'll be more than happy to work with you on anything going forward. With that said, I hope everybody has enjoyed learning something about Wrath of the Rock. I had a really great time with it. If you're looking for an army that just says press W and win the game with like very reasonable consistency while having insane durability and getting to say to your opponent, the thing that you did actually doesn't work, it's a really cool attachment, and I really enjoyed playing it. So yeah, shout out to GW for printing a really cool detachment in the most recent balance. I'm looking forward to seeing the Gene Stockott one, hopefully sometime soon. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting the Nids one on the table too. They've been very, very powerful and very, very interesting. So yeah, that's Wrath of the Rock. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening, and I shall catch you next week for some more bonus content as I fervently try to find the outro video button.